Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Karishma Chawla. I'm an orthopedic physiotherapist and today we are going to discuss another very common injury, that is ACL ligament injury. ACL is anterior cruciate ligament injury. So as we know, our knee joint is a double condyloid joint which is not very stable otherwise. It is stable because of the large amount of muscles around them and the ligaments that attach. So the stability of the knee is provided by the ligaments. If the ligaments get injured, that stability is disturbed. So that is why it is important to learn about such an important ligament as anterior cruciate ligament. So anterior cruciate ligament injuries mostly occur in sports players. Generally, the sports which incur pivoting movements are those which see this kind of injury. These injuries are usually happen when the player is changing the direction. Okay, so these things happen in sports like basketball, in soccer, in tennis, and gymnastics. There are other sports also. So these are the main sports in which these kind of injuries can be seen. Then we know that these injuries could happen because of two mechanisms. The mechanism could be a contact injury or a non-contact injury. Contact injury is injury when you come in contact or collide with another player or the another player has pushed you. So that is contact injuries. Non-contact injuries are when maybe when you are taking off and your foot is in internal rotation and valgus position, and that time it gets torn, so there is no contact with another player. Those are non-contact injuries. Then there is another fact that these kind of injuries usually happen in female population. Female population are more prone to the ACL injuries. Why? Because first, that the ligaments are more lax in females because of the presence of hormones like estrogen, progesterone, relaxin. These make the ligaments more lax. Then secondly, the surface area of female ligaments are much lesser as compared to males, so they are more prone to injury. Then another factor is there, that is females have wider pelvis that makes the Q angle larger in case of females. So because more Q angle means the knee is more in valgus position, so it is already in valgus position, so it gets more prone to valgus and internal rotation kind of injuries. So these are the three main reasons why females are more prone to ACL injuries. So now if we look at the anatomy of the ACL or the ligaments, then we see that ACL is a dense band of connective tissue. So now for understanding the anatomy of the ligament, just have a look at this model. So the ligament in or the tape in pink is our ACL ligament. Okay, so you can see it arises from fibula, it arises from femur. So from femur to tibia. Okay, so ACL arises from the posterior-medial aspect of the lateral femoral condyle. This is the lateral condyle. From the lateral femoral condyle on the medial side of the intercondylar notch. Okay, so it arises from the posterior-medial aspect or the corner of the medial aspect of the lateral femoral condyle, and from there it goes anteriorly and gets attached to the intercondylar notch here. Okay, now this ligament has two parts. First is anteromedial bundle, second is posterolateral bundle. So these two ligaments have different functions at different knee angles. Okay, so when the knee is completely flexed, the anteromedial bundle is taut and the posterolateral bundle is loose. As the knee is extended, the posterolateral bundle gets taut and the anteromedial bundle gets loose. So if you see, these two ligaments have different role to play also in resisting or in the action of the anterior cruciate ligament. We know that the anterior cruciate ligament's primary role is to restrict the anterior translation of the tibia. So here the anteromedial bundle will restrict the anterior translation of the tibia. It has more role in restricting the anterior translation, and posterolateral bundle has more role in restricting the rotatory translation. We know that it resists the rotatory translation also, so that is done by posterolateral bundle. Now as we know, they have different role in different knee angles. So if you remember that we do Lachman test for anterior cruciate ligament integrity. This Lachman test is done at 30 degrees. Why? Because at 30 degrees, both the ligaments are loose, in a loose packed position, and they allow maximum translation to occur. Whereas in full extension, the posterior lateral bundle is fully taut and the passive structures are fully in alignment, in a close packed position. That is why we cannot produce any movement of the tibia in full extension or full flexion. Okay, in full flexion also these two ligaments will be in play. That is why 30 degree is the best position to produce tibial translation, because these two bundles are not working at that time. Now we come to the PCL ligament. The PCL ligament attaches posteriorly on the tibia and goes superiorly and anteriorly and attaches to the anterior surface of the lateral aspect of the medial femoral condyle. Okay, so so this is how these are arranged anatomically, and posterior PCL will restrict posterior translation and also rotation. So as we have seen that the ACL has role in anterior translation and rotatory instability also. So when there is an injury to the ACL, the rotation is also compromised, and this compromise, when there is alteration in the rotatory component, there will be internal rotation instability, and because of that internal rotation instability, there will be more posterolateral component. Okay, there will be more posterolateral component, which is increased up to 41.3% when the knee is flexed till 15 degrees. Then it has also been seen that age plays a very big role. So as the age advances, the risk of this ACL injury increases. The person gets more prone to have ACL injuries as the age advances because of the stress strain curve studies. Okay, so it has been seen that the structural and mechanical properties of the ligament decreases as the age advances. As a result, it becomes more prone to injury. Now if we talk about the effects of muscle stabilization on ACL, then we know that there are a lot of muscles which cross knee joint and have their specific role to play in the knee kinematics. So there was a study which showed that when we do passive extension of the knee, the force is generated in the ACL only in the last 100 degrees of extension. Whereas if there is if quadriceps contraction is there and the quadriceps contract when the person does active extension, at that time there is about 200 newtons of force that is generated, and that causes a lot of anterior translation and force over the ACL ligament. So that is why it is important, because of this fact, to avoid to avoid active contraction of quadriceps immediately after injury. So during a rehabilitation, it is very important to take care that you don't start active contraction of quadriceps immediately after injury, because it will increase the anterior translation of the tibia and will create more force over the ACL and will not allow it to heal properly. So for this, what is the solution? We have as quadriceps will produce anterior translation because of his force vector, we have hamstrings. Hamstrings will produce a posterior translation. Okay, so now we have a certain ratio of hamstrings and quadriceps. This ratio has to be maintained to to avoid this anterior translation. So it is always better to train hamstrings and quadriceps together after injury, immediately after injury. Okay, it is also known that females have this disturbed ratio. They have more quadriceps strength as compared to hamstring strength, so they will have more anterior translation. So this is also a factor which will hamper the rehabilitation in females also. So you have to look at that also, that you have to train hamstrings more as compared to quadriceps in females. And so after injury you can start with co-contraction of hamstrings and quadriceps together, and this will allow the strength to develop and there will be less anterior translation of the tibia. Then another thing can be done, that isometric quads contraction can also be done after 70 degrees. So it will be safe and it will not increase the strain over the ACL ligament. Now if we talk about the mechanism of injury, how this happens, and you should always inquire about the mechanism of injury also during your assessment. So what is the typical mechanism of injury during ACL injury? It is that the patient will say that I attempted a jump movement, or I landed and then attempted a jump movement, or maybe I was changing the position, I was trying to kick the ball towards another player. So these can be commonly how that person presents to you. But if you can see on field how it happened, you will see the knee is externally rotated and in 10 to 30 degrees of flexion with a valgus, with like this, with a valgus force, okay, with a valgus force and in a planted position. Okay, so from the planted position, the athlete may have tried to change the position, or internally rotate the knee to change the position, or take off from that position. So this is how this injury is will occur. So now in this position, if you see, when the knee is internally rotated now after taking off, and there is a valgus force and there is external rotation of the femur, there is 10 to 30 degrees of flexion, and in this position what will happen are ground reaction force will shift more medially. This shifting of ground reaction force more medially will produce more force on the medial side. So that is why sometimes when there is ACL injury, there will be injury of the medial collateral ligament also. There will be injury of the medial tibial plateau also, because there was shift in the ground reaction force. So when there is, and in 80% of cases you will see that there is injury of the meniscus, medial meniscus with ACL. Okay, sometimes the medial collateral ligament also gets injured, and when there is injury to the medial collateral ligament, there is injury to the ACL and the medial meniscus. It is known as Sigmund fracture, or it is known as terrible triad. Now Sigmund fracture is when the injury is such that there is tibial plateau fracture also. With meniscus and ACL injury, there is tibial plateau fracture. That is known as your Sigmund fracture. So now you know the three patterns that can be there. Okay, so This injury could also happen if the concentration of the athlete was disturbed. He was disturbed, or maybe he was looking at some other player and trying to maybe kick the ball somewhere else. Okay, or if there was a perturbation, someone pushed that athlete. In that case, this can happen. Or maybe if the athlete had a more functional valgus. Okay, functional valgus as it is present in females. Okay, in that case they are more prone to such kind of injuries. So there's this hypothesis that how this injury can happen. Okay, so now I again will show you. Now to understand how biomechanically this injury happens, just look at this model. Okay, here in non-contact injury especially, so this is our medial side, this is our lateral side. Okay, so here we have a medial collateral ligament, right, and inside we have a anterior cruciate ligament. Now in non-contact injuries, there will be first valgus loading. There is valgus loading, so this has opened up because of valgus loading. Okay, because of this valgus loading, what happened, there will be more compressive forces on the lateral side. Okay, there are more compressive forces, and here the medial collateral ligament becomes taut. Now this taut medial collateral ligament will force it more laterally, so the compressive force on the lateral side will increase further. And again we have our quadriceps also working here. Okay, so because of this quadricep pull, we have a anterior force vector for quadriceps, so it will cause anterior translation of the femur, but the lateral condyle will not move anterior. Now if you see, it has moved anteriorly. Okay, now this lateral condyle of the femur will rotate posteriorly. After the posterior rotation of this lateral condyle, the tibia will translate anteriorly. Now with tibia anteriorly translating and internally rotating, okay, as I have explained in the mechanism. Now this has rotated internally, so if you see this ligament which was attached here, okay, as it internally rotate, it will tear up. Okay, because of these forces, it will tear up. So this is how generally the ACL rupture occurs, and we know that it happens in females more commonly because of certain reasons. Then if you have to see that after injury how the patient presents to you. So when the patient comes, the important things that you have to see is the alignment. First you have to see the alignment. If the alignment is changed, that means maybe there is a cartilage or there is a fracture along with the ACL injury. So you have to look at the alignment. You have to look at the knee displacement. If there is displacement, maybe there is a fracture. Then you have to see hemarthrosis. Here you will have a differentiating features to meniscus. Generally in meniscus, the swelling happens, this effusion happens after 2 to 3 hours. Okay, because why? Because meniscus is a structure which does not have proper blood supply. Okay, but ligament has a lot of blood supply. That is why the swelling or hemarthrosis occurs immediately. Okay, so there will be immediate swelling, there will be hemarthrosis, and there will be a restriction of movement. Okay, but this obviously depends on the grade of the injury. So there can be certain times when there is no effusion, there is no hemarthrosis seen, and the pain is also less. In these cases, maybe there is a severe injury, as if you look at the presentation and the injury grade, it is almost vice versa. The grade 3 injury has less symptoms. Why? Because In grade 3, the capsule also gets damaged. Because of the damage to the capsule, the inflammation has leaked out of it and there is no tense. The structures are not tense there. Why pain happens? Because that inflammation was impinging the nociceptive fibers. Now when the capsule has got injured or the capsule has got teared, now the inflammation can leak out from that capsule and it will not impinge on those nociceptive fibers. So you will see less inflammation and less pain as compared to grade 2 or grade 1 injury. But in this case, the movement will be unstable. Okay, so hemarthrosis, you have to look for the hemarthrosis. Then palpate all the structures. Palpate for the collateral ligaments also. So if there is an injury to the collateral ligament with ACL, a cruciate ligament injury, you will find tenderness over the lateral ligaments also. You can find the medial joint line or lateral joint line tenderness in cases when there is cartilage damage or maybe there is damage to the meniscus. In these cases you will find a joint line tenderness. Then you should see for ACL, you will find localized tenderness in case of grade 1 or 2 over around 2.5 centimeter above the medial joint line and anterior to the medial collateral ligament. At that area you will find your tenderness. So you have to look for the tenderness there. Then you have to look for the range of motion, if the range of motion is complete or not. Generally the passive range of motion is complete in cases of ligament injury, but passive range of motion will not be complete in case of meniscal injury if it is a bucket handle kind of tear. In that you will find a restriction at the end range. You have to see for the range of motion and how that range of motion occurs. In case of complete injury, there will be unstable knee. So that range of motion will be in an unstable movement. Okay. Then you have to see for the special. Before demonstrating the special test, I want you to see the differences between grade 1, 2 and 3. Before demonstrating the special test, I want you to see the differences between grade 1, 2 and 3 injury in the following table.
In grade 1 injury, we have fibers stretched but there are no tears. There will be little tenderness and swelling, no instability or giving out, no increased laxity, firm endpoint. In grade 2, we'll have partially torn tear and a hemorrhage. Then there'll be little tenderness and moderate swelling. There'll be loss of function, instability and giving out. There'll be increased anterior translation and yet end point is going to be firm and it will be painful. For grade 3, it is complete tear with tenderness but limited pain according to injury. Little swelling or a lot of swelling, instability or uncontrolled knee movements. There will be rotational instability and positive pivot test with no endpoint.
So before starting with your special test or your palpations or your assessment, you should know that these clinical assessments though can be done in grade 1 and 2 on the first day itself, but a grade 3 is not going to allow these assessments on the first day. For them you have to do these assessments after 2 to 3 days. But in case of grade 1 or 2 injury also, though you will be able to do your assessments, but these assessments will not have a good diagnostic value because there was effusion and there was pain. So whatever your assessments result was there could be false. So always these assessments should be done again after 2 to 3 days or after a week again to see the actual picture. Okay, so when you do your special test, just take care during the Lachman test. See if actually in both Lachman test also and also in anterior drawer test, you should see that the tibia is not already in posterior translation. Okay, if the tibia is already posterior translated, it will produce a false negative result. Okay, false positive result, because it was already in posterior translation. Even if it doesn't come forwards, it will look like it is coming forwards, so it will produce a false positive test. Then you should always compare your assessments with the normal side. Okay, you should see what is the movement on the normal side, then you have to see what is the movement on the affected side. Now you can see the differences. Okay, so you should always compare the normal side. And during the pivot shift test, it is important that when the tibia moves backward, it produces a sound. This sound is because of the pull of ITB. Okay, so you have to look for that sound. That sound should be there. Sometimes these sounds are not there, so at that time you should look for the movement. Okay, and compare that movement with the. So for the surface anatomy, first we have to palpate the patella. So this is the upper border of the patella, where you can see this is the lateral border of the patella, and this is the medial border of the patella. Okay, so let's see. So second thing that you have to see is the joint line. You will be able to better appreciate the joint line in the high sitting position, but in the supine position you can still make out this is the femoral condyle, this is the tibial plateau, and there will be a groove in between this. So this is the joint line, this is the medial joint line here, and here we go, this is the femoral condyle, this is the tibial plateau, this is the tibial plateau, this is the condyle, and in between you can find a groove here. So here is the groove. So now go medially in this joint line for the medial collateral ligament. So medial collateral ligament will be the first taut band-like structure, the first restriction that you will feel, and it will be kind of moving. So that will be your medial collateral ligament. So this is my medial collateral ligament. Okay, so now on the lateral side, again if I go laterally, the first restricting ligament will be my lateral collateral ligament. Now we have to palpate the muscles. For the muscle, just ask the patient to put stress on your hand downwards, नीचे की तरफ दबाना. So now you can see this is the quadriceps. So this is your quadriceps here, and here will be your quadriceps tendon. Okay, now here you can palpate the tibial tuberosity. So this is the tuberosity of the tibia, this is the tibial tuberosity, and adjoining this tibial tuberosity you have your patellar tendon. That will be very much palpable. This is your tibial tuberosity. Here will be your head of fibula. This is the head of fibula. Okay. So why is it necessary to palpate joint line? Is because sometimes in case of meniscal injury you will have tenderness over the joint line. Also in case of cartilage injury you will have tenderness over here on the anterior aspect of the joint line. Then again in case of medial collateral or lateral collateral ligament injury, you will have tenderness over these ligaments. Okay. For the anterior cruciate ligament or the posterior cruciate ligament, you will have tenderness all over, or a widespread tenderness, or maybe a tenderness over the anterior aspect of the knee, but typically. Otherwise it is generally a diffuse tenderness. you will be able to palpate the lateral collateral ligament and the joint line in the sitting position better. So here is your joint line, and then you see the first restricting ligament, that will be your lateral collateral ligament on the lateral side, and the medial collateral ligament here on the medial side. So also you have to check for the tenderness of the joint line, because if there is meniscal involvement, you will find tenderness on the joint line also in case of cartilage damage, there will be tenderness over the anterior part of the joint line, and here on the ligaments if the lateral or medial collateral ligament is involved. Joint line 2.5 centimeter above the medial joint line and around a thumb distance from the medial collateral ligament, you are going to have your maximum tender point. So this point is going to be the most tender. So now let's start with the special test. For anterior drawer test, you have to place the knee of the patient at 90 degrees, okay, and then you have to stabilize the foot of the patient.
Okay.
हाँ, लेट जाओ, जगह ही नहीं है. Okay. At 90 degrees of knee flexion, we have to put the patient's knee at 90 degree for anterior drawer test. Then you have to grab the tibia from the back and translate it anteriorly, okay. Then you have to see the movement at the tibial plateau. If it comes forward, there is injury to the anterior cruciate ligament, and you have to always compare the movement of the tibia on the normal side also. Then this is for the anterior drawer test. So there are certain variants for the anterior drawer test. If we do anterior drawer test with 30 degrees of internal rotation, and then we test this, then we do the same thing and test for the anterior translation, we are testing for the anterolateral instability. Now here we are going to see that the tibia on the anterolateral part of the tibia will translate forwards and the medial side is going to go backwards. So this can be done for posterolateral instability also. In this, the foot has to be placed in 15 degrees of external rotation, and 15 degrees of external rotation we are going to do the same maneuver. Here the anteromedial side is going to come forwards and posterolateral side is going to go backwards. So this is for posterolateral instability. Then we have to do the Lachman test. So Lachman test is done in 20 to 30 degrees of knee flexion. Okay. In 20 to 30 degrees of knee flexion, you have to stabilize the femur with one hand, okay, and with the other hand you have to do a anterior drawer. You have to translate the tibia forwards and then compare the translation with the normal knee. We are doing this in 20 to 30 degrees of flexion only because in this the anteromedial band and the posterolateral band of the ACL ligament is most relaxed. Then we come to pivot shift test. In pivot shift test, we have to hold the calcaneum of the patient with one hand, and then we have to produce a valgus stress. We have to internally rotate the knee and produce a valgus stress over the knee and then flex the leg. If you hear a clunk sound or an external rotation of the tibia, or the tibia translates back to its original position when you are flexing the knee, that means there is injury to the ACL ligament. Why this clunk is there? Because we have
ITB from here, which gets inserted on the lateral tibial plateau, right? So when you do the knee flexion, this ITB will pull the tibia backwards and it will come to its original position from internal rotation. So this produces the clunk sound. McMurray's test. McMurray's test is for the meniscal injury. So it is only for differentially diagnosing whether the meniscus is involved or not, or if there is a meniscal injury involved.
After completing your palpation inspection test and all the assessment, you have to ask for the X-ray. So why X-ray is important? Because you will say that it is a ligament, it will not be visible on X-ray, we have to ask for MRI. But if you can see, an X-ray is a low cost thing, okay, and MRI needs a lot of investment, okay. MRIs are going to be around 5,000 to 7,000 rupees INR. So why to ask for X-ray when you can have an idea through your physical assessment? You will have an idea through your physical assessment to make sure you can ask for X-ray. So you can see for these two things on the X-ray. First is notch width index. Notch width index is the ratio between this B and A. Okay, this is the distance between the notch, right? And this is the distance between the widest part of the condyle. Okay, so you have to find a ratio of A upon B. Okay, and normally this ratio should be 0.23. If it is less than 0.23, that means there can be anterior cruciate ligament injury here. Second thing that you have to see on X-ray is bone bruise. So on the medial aspect of the condyle of femur, you will find a opacity on the X-ray. This circular opacity is going to be there, and this is an indication that there is ACL injury. This and also this distance has to be read on X-ray film, and this distance has to be measured by a ruler. And the X-ray is going to be a skyline view X-ray. You can definitely ask for MRIs if the picture is not clear. The MRI will show you the soft tissue structures that got injured, but if you can make out through your physical assessment and an X-ray, that is more than enough. MRI is gold standard for anterior cruciate ligament. Then you can ask for arthroscopic assessment also, but that is not very important to physiotherapists. So after that, you can do a functional assessment. Okay, in functional assessment, this is generally done to know the group which is more prone to get ACL injuries in the future. So you can have a predictive value also, and also during your rehabilitation, after your rehabilitation, you can see. Now for the predictive value, that which group is prone to more prone to ACL injuries, we have certain functional tests. These functional tests you can apply on grade 1 injury also to assess, and also towards the end of your rehabilitation to see how much progress that athlete has made. So in this, you make the patient jump and see the landing process. In this, you have to see if the athlete lands evenly on the ball of the foot. Okay? All these features, I am explaining the features of the low risk group. Okay, so the athlete will land on the ball of the foot. Secondly, the feet will be at least shoulder width apart. Okay, it will be evenly placed. The distance between both the patella is going to be equal. There will be at least around 10 degrees of hip and knee flexion. Okay, and there will be good separation between both the legs, and there will be equal alignment between the knees. So for the high risk group, you will find that the athlete lands on the heel, okay, heel of the, instead of the ball of the foot, the athlete will land on the heel of the foot or whole foot together, okay. Then there will be more valgus. In low risk group, there will not be any valgus of the knee. In high risk group, there is going to be valgus of the knee, internal rotation of the knee, okay, and there is going to be unequal distance between the patella, okay. Then there is going to be there is going to be poor patellar distance. There is going to be the knee and hip is not going to be flexed, it is going to be absolutely extended. So these are the things that you have to see for the predictive.